what Hindu Misia is? I'll tell you, it's hatred against Hindus. Meaning that right now, as I speak to you from the wonderful temple dedicated to Bhagwan Surya, a true testament of our culture and the ingenuity of the ancient kingdoms of India, you should find it despicable. The fact that it was built in 13th century, the architecture with all its details are a sight to behold, should cause you displeasure. Hate, aplenty and without cause is what Hindu Misia is. And unfortunately, this is the line being towed by Western academics. At least that is what it appears to be, with a conference titled Dismantling Global Hindutva, in which 40+ universities have agreed to support it. But what is this conference? How can Hindus, a micro-minority in most of the countries around the world, pose a global problem? Why is this even happening now? The idea is not just devised, it is part of a larger aim to destabilize an economy that is emerging from a pandemic-induced slowdown, more strongly than its contemporaries. It is pivotal for creating distrust towards a government that made the people its priority. It is a threat to the very idea of India. Hello and welcome to New India Junction. I am Richa Dwivedi and this is The Bottom Line. First off, let's just talk about the poster for the seemingly academic conference. Notice the resemblance? The description for the conference on its homepage portrays the BJP in a bad light in 3 paragraphs. Do you know how many paragraphs are there in total? The description then talks about demonetization, agricultural policies and the Citizenship Amendment Act. The same CAA which has become a beacon of hope for religious minorities fleeing the Taliban. So I ask the first question, is this really an academic conference or is it an open declaration of hate against India? Now, if there was conference, any conference relating to Hinduism, don't you think the best place to hold it would be in India? It's natural, isn't it? You can have your pick of Hindu scholars, more literature than you can possibly read, and people who actually follow this way of life. But the conference, if it can even be called that, has Western scholars, is being organized in the United States of America and has as its speakers people who through a facade of academics have propagated an anti-Hindu and anti-institution bias. No one would like that, but it just so happens that Hindus who have spoken against it have been branded uncivilized before they were cancelled and all their arguments dismissed. Which brings us to the speakers. First off, we have Dr. Audrey Trushka, a professor of history. This is the same Dr. Trushka who had pounced upon the photo of a man holding an Indian flag when the extremists stormed the Capitol Hill in the USA. She tweeted that she would add that image to her course and claimed that a lot of Hindu right people were there. But as it turns out, the person holding the flag was not a Hindu nationalist but a Roman Catholic, Vincent Xavier. This is the same Dr. Trushka who had once said that as per her loose translation, and I quote, Sita basically tells Ram he's a misogynist pig and uncouth. And this is the same Dr. Trushka who had breezily brushed aside the millions murdered by Aurangzeb and the temples he had destroyed as an exaggerated number. The same one who had compared Mughal atrocities to Maratha campaigns. Surprised? You will be, because there's more. Another speaker, Kavita Krishnan, is a so-called activist who functions on the Politburo or the Central Committee of the CPI-ML and is known to have her own anti-institutional agenda. From the historic decision to abrogate Article 370, the CAA, to comparing the RSS with the Taliban, she has also glorified the leaders of armed and violent Naxalite movement. Ms. Krishnan has been known to have associations with Dr. Trushka on social media platforms. Seems the like for like model just turned into hate for hate. Similarly, Another speaker, Nandini Sundar, has been known to have links with ultra-hardline Naxals responsible for several attacks on our brave armed forces. You see the general idea? More than academic qualifications, it is likely that hate against the country and the government has been the selection criteria. Why this move against India and an essentially Indian way of life? The answer is quite simple actually. Over the last 15 to 20 years, India has progressed at a dramatic pace in all sectors, be it infrastructure, IT, manufacturing or technology. Through consistent hard work, Indians across the world are economically stable, and as a result, they have become more assertive of their rights. Indians here and across the world are no longer ashamed of their identity, they are proud of it. This sentiment is reflected in academics as well. Western scholars can no longer dominate the discourse on Indianness. Indian literary works written in Sanskrit are being expertly translated directly into English by acclaimed laureates like Bibek Debroy right here in India. These Western scholars and their biased works is fast becoming irrelevant and therefore the threat. But why hold the conference in the West? Hindus come from a faraway land, have customs that are many a times too complicated to understand, a language that is far too complex, and a true sense of hard work that has made them considerably successful. If they win the academic battle, all would be lost, and that is exactly why the conference is looking to tap into and maybe even create this hatred. Can this be why this specific time has been chosen? September 10 to 12, the day of the 9/11 attacks, falls smack bang in the center. Do you honestly believe that the organizers of the conference did not deliberately make it so? Moreover, given the advance of the Taliban in Afghanistan, can this be an attempt to direct any anger or resentment elsewhere? On Indians perhaps? But you may be wondering where these urban Naxals fit in. With strong links in India, these Western academics have established a sphere of influence extending well beyond academics and into politics. But with the academic challenges to the West, the Naxalites in India and their monopoly over the so-called liberal thought is also being shattered. The result? A united front. The target? Hindutva. We have witnessed how different religions across the world have organized and subsequently institutionalized themselves. They have fared remarkably well. We have seen how Jews suffered simply because they weren't, and we have seen how the suffering ceased when they too came together. We have read, written and talked about how India was time and again invaded, conquered and plundered. With no theological society, India remained an easy target, multicultural, diverse and somewhat fragmented. With a shrinking demographic emerged the idea Hindutva. Asserting one's own identity, rejoicing and celebrating it was its only motive. With organizations like the RSS bringing together what was, until then, no different than a complex jigsaw. People who wanted to divide and conquer saw their plans laid bare. Hence, the concerted attack on Hindutva began. Because attacking a way of life that has existed since millennia directly would be far too obvious. With constant efforts being made to organize and bring together Hindus, the sentiment of pride and one's identity was finally being mainstreamed. Hindutva and many organizations working towards this goal were therefore targeted, be it the RSS, the VHP, or anyone associated with them. Do you understand the poster? Does it all make sense now? Dehumanizing is the first step. What follows is open, blatant attack. Remember the PFI procession in Kerala, parading two men wearing RSS uniforms bound in chains. Remember how our liberal media had jumped to their rescue, saying it was just make-believe. Let me ask you a very important question. Is that not a very wrong sentiment? What would have happened if the men being paraded were make-believe PFI members in an RSS Shakha? Consider the Vatican City recognition as a sovereign state with diplomatic representation. How about the Christian Democratic Union of Germany, a political party whose leader is the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel? What about the Organization of Islamic States with 57 members? Are these not examples of asserting religious identity? Just because they have been institutionalized, does it mean they are off the hook? By Western logic, shouldn't there be an annual Dismantling Global Political Islam Conference or Dismantling Political Christianity Conference? At a time when India is growing in every sense of the word, when India's global footprint has become one of significant import, at a time when India's cultural values such as Vasudev Kutumbakam are the driving forces behind initiatives such as Vaccine Maitri, why then are we faced with an unfounded attack on the same cultural values that helped us achieve these feats? You decide.